Usually when I talk about balance patch hopes, most of them are buffs, because that's what I think should be prioritized. However, the next balance patch coming to Splatoon 3 is primarily going to be focused on nerfs, as the devs have already said. So, what if we flip it around? Today, I'm going to focus on all the aspects I think are likely to or should get nerfed, and what changes I would do to them. The goal in general for this is to try to reduce them in ways that keep whatever is being nerfed feeling satisfying while adding more counterplay, and most importantly, not taking anything out of the meta. There's not really any option in the game that I'd want to completely go away, so this is just trying to tone them back in a way that makes it more fair. If you want to catch my reaction to the patch when it does officially go live, be sure to subscribe, and let's get started. So, the first thing I want to target with the nerf might not be what people expect. Splash Wall. I've had issues with this sub for a long time, but we finally know what's on the devs' radar. Not too surprising considering just how strong Squeezer and 52 are, which are both going to be targets in this video. With less ink-hungry weapons in the game and very minimal options to be able to shred wall more effectively, this is a sub that can definitely be the target for some changes. However, HP isn't what I want to go with here. Not only did they already do that, but Object Shredder got buffed going from Splatoon 2 to 3 to be more effective against it. Rather than reducing the HP of the wall in this case, I want to add a bit more of a delay so that wall can't be used as easily to be able to jump someone without them being able to have an option to fight back. The way I'd do this is by adding a 10 frame added delay from wall's deployment time, meaning you'll have 10 more frames to be able to react to it. As a compensation buff though, because this is a pretty drastic change, Wall currently has a 15 frame delay when being deployed on any form of slow, which I'd actually like to reduce by 5 frames, meaning Splash Wall will now have a consistent deployment speed regardless of the type of terrain you're throwing Wall on, which I think will make it feel a bit more consistent to use. Next, let's get to those two wall weapons. 52 has already hit the most by the Splash Wall change, so I don't want to do too much here. However, I do think 52 is by far the most ink efficient weapon to use Wall, and an ink efficiency nerf would be super small for this weapon given it's already really solid with ink efficiency with the gear freedom to run some main saber, so I'll just give it a light 10% ink consumption nerf. Squeezer, on the other hand, definitely needs more. This is arguably the best main weapon in the game right now, and while it does have a painting problem, I think its stats are just a little bit too crazy. And while I think that's intended to be a thing, the weapon's supposed to have incredible strafe speed, range, lack of jump RNG to be able to kill, and make up for its lack of painting ability, I think the stat is just too overtuned. Again, I'm not going to try to do too much to this weapon, but I think what would be fair is to just slightly nerf the fire rate by 1 frame. This means Squeezer's total kill time will go down by 2 frames, as well as having slightly less damage per second. However, the weapon will technically be slightly more ink efficient, and it will be easier to use since the mashing requirement won't be as harsh. I think the wall nerf is the main way I wanted to tone back this and 52, but these changes will mitigate their most annoying attributes while keeping the weapon's playstyles relatively consistent. Since I just targeted a bunch of weapons that I don't play, why don't we talk about my weapon in the meta right now? Range Blaster is very prominent, and let's be honest, the main thing people find annoying from this weapon is the AoE, and blaster radius sizes have been something that's been toned back for a while now. In Splatoon 1, Luna Blaster and regular Blaster had the same radius size of Clash. Both of these have been reduced a bit significantly, and Range Blaster is the only long-range AoE to be left at a 3.5 radius size, with Rapids being reduced to 3.3. So I think you know what's coming up here. I think that Range Blaster should get the exact same radius reduction that happened to the others, going from 3.5 to 3.3. This will still keep the blast radius fairly large, and I don't think will change much for the playstyle, but it'll give it a bit harsher of an aim requirement, as well as slightly reduce its maximum indirect range. Its AoE is still clearly the strongest for its range value, but I think this tones it back enough to be more fair for other options. Next up is Splatana Stamper. I really don't want to nerf this weapon too much, because I think it's already in a pretty good spot, so this nerf is going to be extremely minimal with the weapon already dropping off, because I do still think it's going to be a target for the devs with how prominent it's been in previous tournaments. I'm just going to do a 5% ink consumption nerf on the horizontal slash. The charge slash is already extremely incongruous, but horizontal slash hasn't actually gotten toned back too much, and is the main one that people are using. I think this slight ink efficiency change will make its downtime weakness a little bit larger without reducing it too much and keeping its ability to get Zipcaster as a powerful entry tool. Especially given how difficult Splatana Stamper is, this nerf really needed to be the most slap on the wrist change out of anything here. Let's get onto the weapon that most people want to be changed here, Pencil. This weapon's cooler output is just frankly ridiculous, in addition to its long range pressure. Its paint range is about that of E-liter while having the damage range of Splatter Scope, and honestly, I think two things need to be toned back here. One, it needs to be easier for other backlines to counter it, which means it's gotta get some kind of range nerf so Splatlings can reach it more easily in particular. And two, a slight paint nerf. From running no bazooka, it turns out that if Pen was like 20 points for special more expensive, it would actually be relatively even with stuff like Edit and Zap. So the change I'm going to do for it is something I've done in a previous video. The range will be reduced to match Splat Charger. This gives it a slight damage range nerf and a more significant paint range nerf, while keeping the line paint consistent to enable other weapons to go in. Pen has been pushed to be played more aggressively recently, and I think this is going to force it to have to play more like that, promoting more aggressive play while trying to deal damage to enemies while weakening, sitting back, and painting. This should still be enough to keep the weapon good, but will hopefully open up all the other options in the game. Now that we're finally done with the main weapons, let's get on to the specials. There are three things that I want to nerf here just a little bit. Tacticooler, Tri-Zuka, and Tri-Strike. Let's get Zuka out of the way because I've talked about it plenty. Zuka's startup is the biggest and most obvious issue with the special. I think if they were going to nerf it in any way, this would be the way to do it. Give it the startup of Splatoon 1 Zuka. I think pretty much everyone realizes this is what it needs by now, so I don't really have anything else to say about it. Tri-Strike, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated. It's a bit weaker in the other modes, so I don't want to tone it back by too much. However, it has two very annoying attributes. Mainly that it can cheese zone, as well as just kind of insta-kill compared to pre-patch. The change I'll do is a buff and a nerf. I'm going to slow the expansion radius by 33%. This means it won't kill you as quickly, it won't cheese zone since it'll be easier to paint over it, however, it should still have good object damage, and the special will linger for a little bit longer. Like with Booyah Bomb, this means it will be easier to try to push up with your own Tri-Strikes going off. I think this change barely reduces the power of the special, while getting rid of its most annoying attributes, and making it a bit easier to use for more aggressive weapons it's attached to. Finally is Tacticooler. This is a staple of the meta that I think should stay as popular as it is. The change I want to do to it is just to help with counterplay a little bit. I think the duration of the stand should be reduced from 13 to 10 seconds. This just means there's a little bit less of a time to go and grab the coolers, meaning it's easier to spam the Tacticooler with damage if it was in a weaker spot, and it means that it's easier to counterplay the special by punishing the fact that you have to clump up as a team in order to get them. Finally, points for special and objective change. I think that there are three weapons that I'd like to get a slight nerf in terms of their special output. Slosher really does need nerfs here as a strong midline option, but I can't think of anything else to tone it back with, and I think a 10 points for special nerf won't hurt its strike output too much. Sorella 10 honestly could use a bit of a trade-off buff, which is what it's gonna get. I think its old damage from Splatoon 2 should be brought back, so it puts a bit more power into the main weapon, considering the special and the main weapon special charge are getting nerfed. I think this will also help for its secondary kit. Neo Splash, on the other hand, had no reason to go back to 200p. This thing has been a strike spammer from day one, and 210p is still plenty fast to get enough strikes for a game. Let's just revert that back. My last change is to tower control. I want to nerf stuff like Booyah Bomb and Strike Cheese. Strike Cheese is the biggest offender though. While you can't use it cross-map like Stingray, 3 Tri-Strikes spaced out properly can prevent you from touching tower until overtime ends. This is because there's a 5-second timer in which you need to touch tower in overtime before it goes back to middle. The change I would like to do to this is increasing that time from 5 to 8 seconds, meaning you can get off tower and have 8 seconds to get back on. Strike has only a 6-second duration, and while there is a little bit more to it since the strikes obviously have to travel and land, 8 seconds should be long enough to where people will be able to get off and back on tower even if all 3 strikes hit in a row, as well as helping to make other options like throwing Booyah Bomb at tower weaker. So personally, that's the nerfs I would like to see. Again, I think buffs are by far most important, but if we're gonna have a nerf-focused patch, I hope it's done right. Don't overdo it, keep most of the weapons in the meta at the spot they're at, and try to focus on toning back their most annoying attributes. Let me know what changes you want to see in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.